Hello everyone, this is Dr. Achal and I welcome you all in our subject module titled as Services Marketing. Now, before moving in for the fresh concept, that is the distribution, in this deliberation, in this session we will be dealing with the concept of service distribution. Earlier in our previous discourse, we have dealt with a concept of the services promotion and what are the efforts and the strategies which the service firms are trying to go in for managing out their promotional efforts. Now, in today's deliberation, we will be dealing with yet another topic, and that is one of the important ingredient of the 7 P's which a service provider or service firm tries to go in for. And this is in a P that is basically being related with a distribution aspect, or the after the promotion, the distribution, how the products which are intangible and which are perishable should be made accessible to the customers or to the target audience at a very comfortable zone. So, providing easy accessibility, providing them easy availability of the offerings that you are trying to propose in the market area is also one of the important challenge that is being seen by each and every service firm and service provider. And they are just trying to take into consideration that depending upon the nature of the offerings and taking into account the convenience factor of the target customers, they are just trying to offer out their services to get having a greater appeal, to get greater access to the chosen target segment. So, moving on with the slide, now this particular slide, it is all being related with an accessibility and the availability of the services. It talks about that is the accessibility and the availability of the services. They are the two critical components of the service delivery process in any of the context, whether it is in a healthcare education sector or whether it is in a public utility sector, whether we as a service provider, we are trying to provide the digital services to the target audience. In any of the sectors which are rendering you the pure services, we do have to take into consideration that as the services are basically intangible, perishable and variable, how much effectively we are drafting out our strategies and the procedural plans to make out these intangible offerings to have a greater access with regard to the availability factor of the target audience. Now, both these concepts, that is the provision of the accessibility factor taking into account the availability of the services, both the concepts are key towards ensuring that the services reached all the individuals fairly regardless of their location, abilities and the financial status. Now, this is a factor that is giving you the fact that here the services over whom we are targeting out our efforts, they should be provided or to all the audience or to all the target area customers, the customers who are over whom we are targeting out our efforts. These kind of services in which we are being engaged with, the main component, the different proponents of the core services that has to be reached to each and every individual fairly at an equitable base. It's not in a case wherein we have to just foresee that where the customers are being located enough or what are the financial abilities or how much willing they are to go in for the purchase process depending upon their availability of the liquid income. Now, this is in a factor, these are the factors, that is the accessibility or the location of the customers to purchase and consume out the services or the willingness of the consumers and the customers to move in for the purchase process. Yes, these are the factors which play a prominent role, but from the perspective of the service organization, we have to just ensure that their location, where they are being located enough, the customers where they are being located enough, their discretionary power or their discretionary income to spend out towards the consumption basket, or how they are spending out their discretionary income and disposable income towards the consumption basket of the various kinds of offerings that they are trying to propose into for, or how much they are willing enough to take out the risk and the uncertainties at certain point of time. Now, these are the factors that has to be taken into account, but yes, as a service provider, we have to just ensure that the provision of the services, the offering of the proposition of the services wherein we are being engaged with, that has to be provided to each and every target customers at an equitable price, at an equitable easy access and easy availability should be there to each and every target audience. Now, here it says that it's all being said that accessibility, how the accessibility factor can be seen. Now, it's written in the slide that here the location of the service aligns with the location of the clients or the demands. We have to take into account the geographical and economic and social distance. Transportation factor has to be it has to be placed into due consideration and measured in the distance. That is, the location of the supply aligns with the location of the clients, and that is to be made with the help of the different kind of factors to be analyzed, that is the factors with regard to the taking into account that where are our target customers being located enough in terms of the geographical zones, or where are their accessibility, whether they are being accessible enough in terms of the economic income or the economic bracket that they are holding on. Similarly, the transportation factor, which is very worthy enough to consider upon to give a greater appeal regarding the accessibility factor. And definitely the distance factor to be measured enough should be accurately being defined in terms of giving out a proper appeal and proper accessibility to the chosen target segment. So, here the accessibility is being said that as in a service firm, we have to just ensure that there should be a proper alignment with regard to the offerings that we are trying to dispose of, that is in the form of the supply factor. And the adequate demand should be there, and the accessibility factor, basically because in the case of the services we know that the production and the consumption they are happening at the same point of time. So, the accessibility factor should be taken into account, wherein if we as a service provider we are just trying to offer something new or something unique which is very much being distinct enough as the offerings of the competitors, and definitely there should be a provision wherein the accessibility factor should conveniently be given out to the target audience, so that they can be having a proper ease to purchase and consume out your services. Now, this is a next factor, that is the factor of availability. Now, this says that the size and the volume of the supply meets the client's need, the volume and the type of the services versus the resources to client's volume and the types of the needs, resources which the clients are willing to, they are willing enough to devote upon, the volume and the types of the needs, that is being measured in the congestion factor and the coverage factor. So, the availability of the services, that is primarily being defined in terms of the sizes and the volume of the supply, which is having out a greater consonance towards meeting out the client's need. That is, we as a service provider, whether we are being efficient enough, whether we are being diligent enough towards meeting out the different kind of volume and the different kind of intensity of the demand that is being proposed by the target audience, whether we as a service provider we are being adequate enough towards meeting out that particular demand that is being proposed by the target audience, and that is being seen in the terms of the size and the volume of the supply, and whether we as a service firm, our volume and the supply of the services or the offerings are adequate enough towards meeting out those customers' expectations. Like suppose there is a greater there is a greater rush in the peak hours, wherein the tourists are having they are having a more inclination to visit out the tourist spots and the spiritual places. In that particular point of time, the hospitality sector has to take into account that the booking of the hotels and the restaurants, that has to be made easy, very much being easily accessible to them, because in the peak seasons of wherein the tourists are having a greater demand to visit out to the spiritual places or to the certain kind of tourist destinations. So, this availability of the services is here being talked of in the same sense, that is the volume and the size and the supply of the offerings that you are trying to propose, that should be in consonance with the meeting out the needs and the expectations and the demands of the target audience. Similarly, this is in a volume and the type of the services. It says that it should be in versus the resources to the clients, that is the volume and the type of the services that you are trying to propose, and whether that particular quantum of the services and the different variants of the services that you are trying to propose in the market area, they are basically in alignment, or they are basically in consonance with meeting out the different aspirations and expectations of the people or not. Similarly, the volume and the types of need, we know that we are having a different kind of needs to go in for different target customers. Even if we have segmented out our heterogeneous market area into some common grouping, even then we can experience that each and every individual customer and the consumer, they are coming up with their own set of needs. They are having their own set of needs which are very much being distinct enough from the set of the needs of the other customers or the other consumers. So, the type and the volume of needs has to be explored, it has to be identified by the service provider, then only we can be able to give out a customized approach or a personalized approach to the target audience. So, the type of needs, because there are certain point of time wherein we are saying that the purchase decision or the consumption of the services, they are primarily being defined by the emotional motives. Similarly, there are certain instances wherein the rational motives are more being prominent enough, like we can take an example, like suppose before moving in for a particular kind of museum, or before moving in a particular kind of institute to get admission in a particular institute, we as a consumer, we just take into account its brand, its credibility which is being enjoyed by that particular institute. And before getting into the admission in certain reputed B schools or in certain IITs, we are very much being sure enough that that particular reputation, the brand or the credibility that these institutions are enjoying in the marketplace, if you are getting admission there, or if you are getting associated there at any of the phase of the life, we should be having that particular feel wherein our personal identity will be getting enhanced because of the association with that particular credible organization. So it means that here the volume and the type of needs, which kind of needs we are having or we are lacking out in our personality. Definitely the type of needs that was also being proposed by Abraham Maslow, and he has already said that primarily we are being composed of, or every individual is being composed of primarily 5 kind of needs. And he has said that these 5 kind of needs may be prominently in the form of the basic needs, the satiation of the social needs, and then safety needs come. Fourth is one of self-actualization, and the last one is the fourth order need is in a self-esteem, and the last one is basically being related in a self-actualization. So the basic needs, which is also being talked of in the sense of the physiological needs, and the physiological needs is all being related within a satiation of your hunger, food, all the clothing and all your biological needs. Similarly, after the satiation of the biological needs, which are being equally enough relevant for each and every living being in our universe, not only in terms of the living being which are being classified as human beings, but the satiation of the biological needs, they are equally being relevant for the animals too, but the way they are satiating out their biological needs is somewhat being different as compared to the human beings, and that is what a reason wherein we are making it in a quite distinction between how the biological needs are being satisfied and they are being gratified by the human beings as compared to the gratification which the animals do. Without taking into account any kind of societal norms and the cultural beliefs and the patterns. So here the biological needs is being common. So after the biological needs, we are saying that is in a social needs comes in the second ladder, safety needs come to the third one, self-esteem, and then last one is self-actualization. Now, the priority of the fulfillment of the needs regarding social aspect, regarding safety aspect or self-esteem, it depends upon the individual, whether the individual is holding out a lackness in their personality, whether the safety aspect is more being prominent enough to fulfill upon in their lifestyle, or whether it is the whether in their personality they are lacking out something which is in the form of the social aspect, whether they are not being able enough to socialize in the social environment. So if that particular factor, the variable is somewhat is lacking in their personality, definitely they will be trying to cherish those kind of fulfillment of the needs, that is the social needs. And here the safety needs will be coming to, it will be falling into the third category as compared to the social needs. So social needs will be falling in the second category. So there is an overlapping of the categorization of the needs that is being proposed by the Abraham Maslow. So here as a service provider, we have to take into account that whether these classification of the needs that is being proposed by the Abraham Maslow, they are equally being relevant towards gratiating the different kind of set of needs which the target customers over whom we are trying out to make out our efforts to meeting out the needs of the target customers, whether they are equally being relevant enough, or whether we have to just take into account that which set of needs are more being prominent enough by which category of the individuals, or which set of needs are more being prominent enough for which category of individuals, and according to that we have to customize our offerings so that they can be able enough to meet out their expectations. Now this is all about that is measurement in terms of the congestion and coverage, accessibility of the services of the offerings which the service provider are trying to propose. That is also being influenced by certain kind of variables which are being talked of in the sense of the congestion factor or the coverage factor. We know that for providing a greater appeal and the greater appeal of the core offerings which you are trying to deal, the accessibility factor and the availability factor is playing a very profound role. So here the congestion factor, how you are trying to dispose of your offerings into the market area, how effectively and diligently you are trying to dispose of your offerings in the market area, whether there is any congestion or not, whether already the market is being flooded with the numerous other kind of offerings, whether we as in a service organization, we are trying to craft out our strategies and the procedural plans which are effective enough towards providing a greater appeal and targeting out to a wider audience, apart from meeting out the expectations and the aspirations of the chosen target area, whether that particular kind of approach is being it is really being done or not. So our measurement, our procedural plans, the strategies which you are drafting, whether we are able enough to meet out these kind of needs and the requirements of the target area. Their measurement, there should be a certain kind of measurement to chalk out and to figure out the efficacy of the involvement of our decisional areas in terms of making the customers more being gratified enough towards the value creation process in which you are being involved with. So the measurement, definitely measurement of the availability or the availability of the services, they are also being measured in terms of the congestion factor, which is being seen in terms of the different kind of offerings which are there available in the market. How to come out with a unique kind of distinctive image, how to differentiate out your offerings within a good kind of brand logo, within a good kind of credible image, within a good kind of reputation that you have earlier you did with the help of the different promotional appeals. You have proven out yourself with the help of the core offerings that you have already generated for or you are being involved with, and you have proven out your mettle in the form of meeting out the expectations of the people, and the customers, they have already been delighted enough towards the consumption of your services. So the measurement and the availability and the accessibility of the services, it is also being affected by the different kind of congestions which are there available in the marketing area in the form of the competition factor, in the form of the different kind of variables which are creating a congestion for you towards a proper disposition, which are basically being termed as a challenging factor for you to provide you or to dispose out your services very effectively to your target audience. So that has to be taken into account, and definitely the coverage factor plays a very important role, because we will be saying the same thing, that is we as a service firm, we don't have to just look into for just making out our offerings very much in aligned with meeting out the expectations of the target audience, but apart from that the offerings should be capable enough towards providing a greater benefit to the society at large. That is why the coverage factor, that is the offerings should be having a capability to provide a greater benefit to the masses at large. That is more being defined in terms of the coverage. Now moving on to the next slide. Now this is all about the availability and the accessibility in the introductory factor, that says that the availability and the accessibility, they are the two pillars of the equitable service delivery. Services that are widely available but inaccessible to certain populations create inequalities. Conversely, highly accessible services that are not widely available are ineffective. Both must be addressed to provide fair and efficient services to all. Now, availability and accessibility of the services, they are the two equitable pillars as is being written in the slide, that is they are the two important factors to be taken into account, that is their availability, the proper adequacy of the offerings, and then the accessibility factor to the target audience. Accessibility in terms of the proper coverage, accessibility in terms of the proper location, accessibility in terms of giving them a more greater appeal. Whenever the customer is in a need, you are being available enough to provide them the services, like the medical services, the practical practitioners are offering you the services 24/7 hours because these are the services which are being classified as an essential services to talk of. Similarly, certain libraries, in fact most of the libraries in our universe, in our prominent universities, they are getting open enough 24/7 hours for providing greater access to the target audience in the form of the students and the form of the academic fraternity. We are providing them an easy access. Similarly, for the purpose of getting ourselves having out the access of the reservation facilities, railway, these kind of sectors, that is the railways and the airline industries, are helping you out to provide a greater access, and we as a customer, we can be booking out our tickets at any point of time, sitting at the home, at the comfort of your home, or sitting at any of the place, we can be able to get out the tickets that we are trying to book upon. So this is the availability and accessibility, they are the two prominent pillars as it is being said. So, and here we are saying that if the services are widely being accessible, even if the services are accessible, they are being available, if the services are widely being available, their quantum and the size is, the quantum of production of the services are widely being available, but they are inaccessible to certain kind of populations, they are inaccessible to certain kind of chosen target area. Then in that particular case, our effective proposition of the 7 P's, our crafting of the 7 P's will not serve an effective process to work upon. It will not be working very effectively towards meeting out the needs of the target audience. So here we have to just ensure that even if the quantum of the delivery of the services, they are being adequate enough, but they are being inaccessible. So that particular factor has to be taken into account, that is the adequacy of the disposition of the services should also be relevant enough, should also be associated enough towards providing a greater appeal and accessibility to the target audience. So the availability and the accessibility factor should both be taken into account. Similarly, conversely to it, there can be a situation wherein we are saying that the services are highly being accessible to certain population, but the quantum and the efficacy of delivery of the services, they are ineffective. So accessibility and the availability both should go hand in hand, and even if the services are highly being accessible, the target audience and the target population, they are having a greater appeal, they are having a greater ease to go in for the consumption, purchase and the consumption of the services. But if that particular factor is very much being effective enough, but they are not very much being equitable enough towards making out the consumption, or the the consumption factor is good enough, but the proper disposition, the availability, the proper supply of the offering is not very much being good enough as compared to the accessibility factor. Then in that particular situation also, your strategy will not be proving enough to go good in the future course of action, and you as a marketer, you will not be able enough to provide a efficient and fair and equitable services to each and every population over whom you are trying to target out your efforts. Now moving to the next slide. Now this is the accessibility overview. It says that accessibility refers to how easy it is for people to reach, understand and use out the services. This includes physical access, digital usability, language accessibility and affordability. For services to be inclusive, they must cater to the diverse user needs, abilities and limitations. Overcoming barriers to access is critical to quality in the service provision. Now this slide says that what is all about the accessibility. It says out the fact that accessibility is all being related with making out your offerings getting at ease, how the people are getting at ease, they are very much being at ease towards purchasing and using out your services. This is what is being talked of as an accessibility factor from the point of view of the consumers. Now this accessibility is being defined in many of the ways, as it is being said here in the slide, that being accessible is how to use it is basically being related, and it is being said that it is how easy you are providing out your offerings to the people who are very much being easy enough to reach. The people are very much being they are accessible in terms of the understandability factor. The accessibility is also being talked of in terms of the usage factor. Similarly, accessibility is also being said in the sense of the physical access, whether the customers and the consumers are having a greater physical proximity to reach towards that consumption, purchase and the consumption of those offerings whom you are trying to target upon. Similarly, the digital usability, because we know that we are living in a cutthroat competition, we are living in a very transformative world, wherein every now and then we are making out our transactions with the help of the digital uses. Now the customers are also very much being informed enough in the same point of time. At the same point of time, it is the marketers who are also need to have abreast with the different kind of technological changes. So greater digital usability is also one of the important variable and a factor that is giving you greater appeal to provide a greater accessibility to the services. Similarly, the language accessibility, there should not be any kind of semantic barriers to talk upon. The purchase and the consumption of the services that is being done by the consumers. The consumers and the target audience should not be having any kind of constraint, should not be having any kind of limitation wherein they are not having a comprehension to know about the users factors, to know about the do's and the don'ts of the consumption of the services. Like you can take an example, like if you have visited to a grouping center to get yourself being beautified enough, the users factor, the different kind of ornaments, the different kind of cleaning compounds, the different kind of makeup products that are being used by the wellness center or the beautician, they will be just being used, taking into account your hair, taking into account your skin texture, the hair texture, the skin makeup, and then they will be giving it a beautification. So you as a consumer, whether you are being at ease with what they are trying to communicate you out, whether you are being able enough to understand the language that they are trying to propose upon, or in the same instance we can take another example, if in a particular kind of classroom the teacher is teaching you and the learners, they are not being able enough to assess what the teachers and the academic fraternity are trying to deliver you out. Similarly, this will be termed as a language barrier in which the center is trying to communicate you out and the receiver is not trying to assimilate what the center is trying to give you out. So this is a kind of language barrier that is equally being prominent enough here in the case of the services arena, wherein the accessibility is also being sensed in the terms of the usability factor, in the sense of the in the sense of the language factor. Similarly, says that for the services to be more affordable and accessible, the services should be inclusive in nature. They must cater to the diverse user needs, abilities and limitations. Now, for the purpose of inclusion, for the purpose of giving you an inclusive delivery process of the services, there is an important need that the proposition of the services should be made in such a way wherein you as a marketer, you are trying to cater on to the diverse and the divergent needs of the different kind of users, not only with regard to meeting out the expectations and aspirations of the target audience, but yes, apart from those, we have to just take into account that our proposition and the disposition of the offerings should be able enough to provide the benefits to the society at large, and that is what is being talked of as catering out to the diverse user needs, capabilities and the limitations. We know that every buyer, every customer, they have a different divergent needs to talk of. As earlier we have discussed that the need hierarchy that was being proposed by Abraham Maslow, it was being said that basically we are in a 5 set of needs, and their gratification of the different set of needs which a particular individual holds on, their intensity and the gratification of the satiation of one particular order of needs, it is very much being different with regard to one individual as compared to the other individual. Now, in the same family structure, we can say that even if you are living out in the same family structure, your siblings will have another different kind of set of needs, and the gratification and the order of the fulfillment of that particular need will be different enough as compared to the your elder brother or your younger brother or your younger sister or the elder sister, your siblings, that is. Similarly, it says that here for the purpose of making out your disposition of the services inclusive enough, you as a service provider, you have to take into consideration that the abilities, the needs and the limitations of the target audience has to be taken into account. Limitations in the sense that whether they are they are willing enough to go in for the consumption, whether there is any hindrance in terms of their economic disposition, their economic determinants are good enough, their personal and the disposable income are good enough, and that is how we can measure that. It is only possible that here as in a marketer, we are just trying to foresee the economic conditions. If the economic conditions are good enough, definitely we will be having a situation and a feel wherein we can realize that the consumers and the customers will be having a good adequacy and the disposable of the personal income to purchase and the consume any kind of services if they are being interested enough. So, this willingness, even if we are willing enough and we are not having any kind of financial crunch, that particular financial crunch should be measured and should be, that should be explored by the agile and the effective marketers. So, overcoming the barriers, it is also being said that overcoming barriers to this is critical to the equality in the service provision. Definitely, for making out your creation, the delivery of the services to be inclusive, we have to take into account that apart from meeting out the expectations of the target audience, the abilities, the needs, the limitations which the customers are showing out in their purchase process towards the consumption of the services, apart from these, we have to just draft out our strategies in terms of overcoming these kind of variable, these kind of barriers which are being defined in the sense of the meeting out the divergent needs of the customers and the abilities of the buyers and the limitations which they are hindering out in terms of the accessibility or the availability, or maybe in terms of the economic brackets. And overcoming these barriers are very much being important enough, because then only you will be being able enough to meet out the strategies of the availability and to provide them a proper availability and accessibility of the services which you are trying to dispose of in the market area. Now moving to the next slide, now, this is in a physical accessibility. It is all being related within a factor wherein we are saying that the physical accessibility is ensuring that the services can be used by the people with disabilities. This includes providing ramps, elevators, braille signages and adapted facilities for wheelchair users. Many public and private facilities, they still fall short in meeting these standards, impacting equity. Some examples of the physical accessibility include, like we are taking another example of the parking, that is in a wheelchair accessible parking, the entrance, the level entrance. Now physical accessibility, it is all being related within a physical evidence, it is all being related within an infrastructural facilities that we are trying to go in for. We know that there should be a proper infrastructure, there should be a proper accessibility for the customers who are coming out to be defined, and they are coming out to be falling into different kind of categories. Certain consumers, definitely the most of the consumers and the customers, they are very much being normal in nature in terms of their physical features, in terms of their physical personality, but there can be a specific case wherein we are trying to cater on to the needs of those kinds of people who are falling in the category of the certain kind of disability. So if the people are having certain kind of disability, these kind of physical disabilities has to be met upon, and you as a service provider, you have to ensure that certain kind of personalization and the customization has to be given out to these kind of specific people. Now this is necessary enough in order to provide them a greater ease and greater availability. Definitely the availability is there, but the greater ease can be given out to them in terms of providing out a greater physical facilities. Now here this has been said that the provision of the ramps or the elevators or the braille signages and the adapted facilities for the wheelchair users. We can take another different kind of example, like it has been given here. It has been given here in the slide, that is the construction of the ramps for the people who are using out the wheelchairs, or you are providing you as a marketer, you are providing certain kind of braille signages for the purpose of helping those kind of blind people or the people who are having certain kind of visual disability. Even if we can go in for making certain kind of adaptation to provide a proper suitable conducive atmosphere, proper suitable conducive facility to the people who are using out the wheelchairs, and those who are having elderly people not being able enough to walk, the ramps are very much being suitable enough to give them a greater ease. Similarly, it's being said here that many of the public and the private facilities, they still lack and they still fall short of meeting out these standards, impacting equity. And many of these instances, it is being said that not only the private or the people who are being engaged in the private sectors providing you the services, they are very much being diligent enough, and they are very much being sensible enough to meet out the expectations of the these kind of chosen target area. And if the people are falling, if the consumers are falling within that particular kind of limitations, they are specifically trying to cater on to their needs by providing these kind of provisions. But there are certain instances in which we can be witnessing that the public sector are not coming up with that particular kind of mark. Because of certain reasons, maybe they are having not a proper appropriation is not being made towards meeting out those towards meeting out the expenditures towards those head, and then we have to just ensure that there should be for the purpose of equitable distribution, providing out a greater accessibility of the services to each and every people, to each and every kind of buyers, to each and every kind of consumers, whether the buyers are falling in the category of the healthy people, whether the buyers are falling in the any category of the disability, they should be given out within a fair kind of disposition of the services in terms of the accessibility factor, in terms of the adequacy factor. That is all being here written here. That is the provision of the physical accessibility, including the parking facility, the wheelchair facility, easily accessible, and that is being provided in the parking facility. Similarly, the entrance level should be constructed if certain kind of, if we as in we are operating certain kind of services, and that is for the purpose of providing greater accessibility, there should be a certain kind of a staircase. Similarly, at the same point of time, a ramp should also be there, so that the people who are using out the wheelchairs, or the people having certain kind of limitations, they will be using out the wheelchair in a very comfortable way, and they will be able enough to purchase and consume out your services very effectively. Now, moving on to the next slide, this slide says that the digital accessibility. Now, earlier we have discussed the accessibility in terms of the physical facilities, in terms of the physical way. Now, digital accessibility is all being related here. That is, it is focusing on making out the websites, apps and the digital platforms usable by people with disabilities. This includes providing features like screen readers, closed captions and easy navigation, ensuring digital platforms are accessible to as it is accessible and is critical as more and services move online. Some of the example of the digital accessibility are given below. That is keyboard navigation, making it possible for users who cannot use a mouse to navigate. And then screen readers, that is softwares that can read aloud text for people with visual impairments. Now, digital accessibility, it's being said here that is focusing on making out the websites, apps and the digital platforms for those people who are having a certain kind of disability. Now, digital accessibility, we know that in this today's evolving world, we are revolutionizing everything. Everything is getting transformed in terms of their users factor, in terms of their frequency factor, in terms of the do's and the don'ts. We as a customer, we are very much being pronounced enough towards making out our transactions with the more users of the digital devices. Similarly, the marketers are also keeping themselves abreast with these kind of things. So, the digital accessibility is also one of the important factor to be taken into account by the service provider, wherein the service organization and the service firms, they are providing a greater access in terms of the users factor with the help of the digital devices. Like we are saying that screen readers and the closed captions is being provided to the customers, to the consumers for the purpose of their easy use. If the people are having certain kind of visual impairment, they can be given out with certain kind of platforms like screen readers are being given to them. They are not being able enough to see, but the certain kind of signages and certain kind of braille kind of thing, the braille system can be given out to them so that they can be able enough to make it out what are the things that they are trying to propose and how they can be able enough to move into certain kind of transactions. The easy navigation can be done to them. Similarly, ensuring digital platforms like accessibility is very critical for those services which are moving online. If we as a marketer, we are trying to perform out our services through the virtual mode, through the online and digital mode, definitely the greater appeal and accessibility factor has to be given to certain kind of specified people who are facing with certain limitations. Like we are given an example like keyboard navigation. It is very possible for those users. Who cannot use out a mouse to navigate. Now, if the people are not being able enough to see properly, if there is certain kind of visual impairment, we can be able enough to give them a greater appeal in the sense of the keyboard navigation. We are not being able enough to use out the mouse, not being able enough to sense out the users of the mouse. The keyboard navigation will be helping you out to these people who are suffering certain kind of limitations of the visual impairment, and that particular kind of facility, that is the digital accessibility, will be helping them out. Similarly, the screen readers, the users of the screen readers, this is in a software that can read aloud the text for the people with visual impairments. Definitely If you are not able to being able enough to figure out or to chalk out the things with the help of the visual mode because of the certain reasons, the screen readers are there to help you out to come out within a to have a greater understandability, to have a greater comprehension. That is what is all being talked of. The software will be helping you out to read the aloud the text that you are trying to go in for. So this is all about the physical accessibility and the digital accessibility. And in today's discussion, we have dealt that how these kind of pillars, that is the accessibility factor and the availability factor, are playing a very prominent role towards the distribution of the services, and how this is very much being important enough for different people to go in for. And I hope that this particular proposition that we have deliberated in today's discussion will be easy enough and you have comprehended enough to get into a more elaborate understanding of the distribution aspect. So till then, I am ending up my session here only. Till then, stay safe and stay blessed. Thank you all for joining.